Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journey, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2023. And that brings us to that title, which has been designated by Criterion at spy number 1176. And this is a work which is described as being from the year 1979. And the name of the filmmaker is Joan Micklin Silver. And the name of the work is Chilly Scenes of Winter. This is the work which is described as being from the year 1979, and it is from the great filmmaker artist Joan Micklin Silver. The director, Joan Micklin Silver, also the screenplay writer, based upon the novel by Anne Beattie, and also producers Mark Metcalf and Amy Robinson and Griffin Dunn. And among its great cast, we have people like John Hurd and Mary Beth Hurt and Gloria Graham and others. Wow, what a fantastic cast and assembled here for this very offbeat, quirky, earnest, sincere, funny, humorous, shocking, and inventive and very witty film. It's also very emotional and has a lot of resonance, which I think is so relatable and so accessible and so honest and true and raw and painful, everything at once. And that's, I think, a hallmark of a really great film. And that is this film, Chilly Scenes of Winter. There is so much to say with regard to the production and its release history and the different titles that it had, as well as different versions, etc., in terms of its initial release versus its re-release sometime later. And we'll get into a little bit of those details when we talk about some of the supplements that are included with this Blu-ray release made by Criterion this year. But for now, before we get into those discussions, let us first try to, or endeavor to, talk about this film, the plot and story structure of this film. And I think if we were to try to describe the essence of this film in terms of its story, we could focus on our main characters, portrayed by John Hurd and Mary Beth Hurt, respectively. This is Charles and Laura. And this is our, shall we say, their relationship is in many ways the heart and soul of this film. And we see various aspects of the existence or non-existence of that relationship, as the case may be. And in fact, when we start the film, we understand that Charles and Laura have already broken up after having had a very intimate and romantic and intense relationship together. They have broken up, and that is the state of affairs when the film begins. And we get a sense of this in terms of John Hurd's character's perspective, and he seems, again, in this state of being in this breakup or post-breakup with a relationship now over as the film begins. He seems to not be over it, in a manner of speaking, and in fact, even after a considerable amount of time has passed since the relationship ended, and again, this begins the film, even though we understand that a considerable amount of time has passed, he still seems to be very much into Laura and wanting to get back together with her, or maybe still thinking about her, or still wondering about her, or perhaps still in love with her, or perhaps obsessed with her, or perhaps infatuated by her for certain reasons or other instances or indications of his own character and behavior. And that is one of the, I think, areas of the film that I think is open to a great deal, I think, of interpretation and reading, which is makes for a very fascinating watch indeed. And that type of interaction or engagement with the film is further compounded by the fact that not only does the film open with this structure of already being in a situation where the relationship is ended, Uh, and we see the characters, and specifically the John Hurt character, coping with this or trying to deal with this in these maybe humorous or funny or witty or maybe dryly comic or perhaps subtly disturbing or somewhat manic-like tendencies emerging types of scenarios. We see this emerge in that quote-unquote present-day situation, but we also see through the wit and I think really great skill of editing and structure, we get flashbacks. And these flashbacks seem to jump back and forth in time to a period where we see the beginning of the relationship between Laura and Charles, Mary Beth Hurt's character, and John Hurt's character. And we also see already how their relationship blossomed and developed and really grew in terms of intimacy and a type of romantic inclination, especially understanding who these characters are and what their backgrounds are and what their prior or other relationships with other characters might be at a given point in time, which adds to, I think, the level of, say, emotional complexity and type of intensity, and also adding to the sense of the drama and melodrama and also the romantic comedy elements that I think propel the film forward in a myriad of ways. This, therefore, I think has the richness of a very clever and quite surprising cinematic and editing structure that again goes back and forth in time. So we are in certain ways enveloped in quote unquote the present, the post breakup, and then we are also enveloped in the past, the relationship or the beginnings of the relationship, or perhaps through the interweaving of editing and time. Jumping in certain places in their relationship to see exactly how they are dealing with each other and the time that they spend with each other. And throughout this examination, in this really inventive cinematic structure, we see the highs and the lows and everything in between. It is a relationship that has its moments of, I think, real charming, romantic beauty, for lack of a better phrase, and a real sense of warmth and intimacy. On the one hand, you can tell that these characters are really into each other, but along the way, we also get a sense of certain divisions or certain, say, cracks in the relationship that begin to emerge and grow and grow and grow. That might be based on a sense of miscommunication. That might be based on a sense of misplaced jealousy. That might be based on a sense of the idea of togetherness versus wanting a certain sense of privacy, even in these intimate settings of a romantic relationship. That might also have to do with prior relationships that may or may not have some kind of impact or effect on how people in the current relationship view their partners, etc. So these, I think, form the basis or backdrop of various scenarios or various situations that, again, we see play themselves out over the course of the running time. And we see the way in which, say, the wonderful geography and landscape, the snowy landscape is I think, wonderfully applied. We see the wonderful sense of what's known as the A-frame house, which I think adorns part of the cover art here, and that becomes also its own image and symbol, both within the context of the film, as well as a type of, say, structure and setting or environmental guidance, if you will, that provides also, I think, a crucial plot point as well as a type of a critical, say, character a revelation or a means by which we as viewers can get a sense in terms of metaphor and also direct reference, can get a sense of what drives these characters to do what it is they do. And indeed, we have also at the very heart of this the various relationships between parents and children, between husbands and wives, between lovers, between people who are very intimate, and between friends who are trying to help each other, but also perhaps are unable to understand what it is that's really going on, or maybe between people who are just beginning to know each other, people who are beginning to maybe consider the possibilities of dating, etc. And this is also where the film, I think, really shines and blossoms. It really goes into this idea of the feelings and the excitement and the wonder and the kind of trepidation that goes into getting to know someone for the first time and getting to really know that person more as time is spent and as relationships grow and grow. And then also the idea too, not just of the excitement and wonder and the romantic intensity and thrill of being with someone else, but also the heartbreak and the agony and the type of almost confusion that is involved with the sense of breakup and with the sense of a type of maybe a difference of temperature. Maybe one person feels one way, whereas the other person feels another way, and this difference might have something to do with the success or failure of any given relationship, and that is all drawn out, I think, very vividly and very clearly and very effectively in this film, Chilly Scenes of Winter. I mean, in that way, it has the hallmarks of being, as I say, this really quirky human melodrama. It also has the hallmarks of a really funny romantic comedy, a comedy of errors. And there are some moments that there's some setups that are very funny, very humorous, and very surprising in terms of how they twist and turn in terms of the various developments. And also, this film has the hallmarks of being a very intense human drama. It's a human drama about relationships, and it's about connections, and it's about the making of connections. It's also about the breakdown of connections. And even in post-breakdown, it is also about the promise or fulfillment or wonder or perhaps the misguided hope. Or maybe it's perhaps more, it's not so misguided as one might think. One has to watch the film to find out, of course, but maybe it's the hope, whether it's misguided or not, as to what might happen post-breakup. Is there the possibility of a reunion or coming together again? And the like. So it has that type of inclination, I think, very, very invitingly so, of a type of a romantic drama, a human drama, a drama about relationships or the lack of or breakdown of relationships. Also about understanding and miscommunication. It's also about romance and intimacy, and also obsession, almost to a quirky, or perhaps even maybe from a certain point of view, a humorously disturbing degree, or a disturbingly humorous degree, depending on how one views this. But I think despite all that, or amongst all that, or given all these various sets of possible, say, genre or approach to this film, what's so great about it is that in the hands of Joan Micklin Silver and others, and also grounded by the great performances by John Hurt and Mary Beth Hurt and others, Gloria Graham and others, what we have is the way in which this film has many different, points of energy that seem to be zigzagging in many different directions, which is, I think, it makes the film, I think, very, very engaging and rewarding in terms of rewatch and rewatch and rewatch. And there's a way in which the characters, I think, can become very sympathetic and likable on the one hand, and then in a next moment maybe say something that is very despicable or very unwelcoming. But then we never lose sight of our sympathies for these characters, because I think all the way we can understand, or we're given enough information and room as viewers of this film to perhaps understand and sympathize where these characters are coming from, where all the characters are coming from, where each of the characters is coming from, even despite the intensity and the extremity of some of the situations that they find themselves in, and even despite or notwithstanding some of the ways in which they might seem unlikable in a given situation. That is the element of the human. That is the element of this film's success in portraying these characters in the human and three-dimensional way that is so deserving and so wonderful about Joan Micklin Silver's cinema, and that we never lose sight of the fact that these are human beings, and we never lose sight of the fact that these are human beings engaging with each other in a way that is oh so human. And given all these scenarios and almost like sketch comedy situations that build and build and build, which also has its own form of entertainment, and also compounded by how brilliant the structure is in terms of the flashback structure and jumping back and forth in time. which also adds to the cinematic grace and malleability of this film, which is really brilliant. It always keeps its focus on the human characters, and I think in that way it welcomes us in terms of this world of these people who are going through things that I think are very understandable. Things that I think any viewer, or almost any viewer, might be able to understand and sympathize with. The idea of meeting people, going through a relationship, what happens after the relationship might end, how does one cope with that? Is there the possibility of a type of rapprochement or getting back together again? And how does one handle a situation where maybe one person in the relationship feels one way and maybe the other person in the relationship feels a different way? Will there ever be the possibility of connection or reconnection? I think these are feelings that I think could be understood by many a viewer. I can certainly understand and feel, or it reminds me too of sort of feelings and viewpoints and experiences that I've had in my life in terms of relationships, both in terms of friends and family and loved ones, etc. And so I think watching this film reawakens or reminds me of those feelings and rumors and memories, both pleasant and perhaps even not so pleasant, but it's all running the gamut of what one might call the human experience in this greatly emotional and intimate way. And while at the same time providing many layers of entertainment in terms of a genre placement, and at the same time always keeping its eye on the intimate and emotional and human aspect of the stories and the characters that we meet, grounded by the great performances by John Hurt and Mary Beth Hurt and others. This is a really splendid film. It is a quirky film. It is offbeat. And it is so memorable indeed. It's so great to have this film in the physical media catalog of the Criterion Collection, directed by Joan Micklin Silver. It is this film, which is Chilly Scenes of Winter. The Criterion Collection has released this film, Chilly Scenes of Winter, again at SPY number 1176, and on the occasion of this release in 2023, this is the Blu-ray edition, and it is purported to be based on a new restored 4K digital transfer with uncompressed monaural soundtrack. And to give more details, let me now refer to the leaflet or insert, which is part of the Criterion release, and I have some comments to make about this a little bit later in this video. But let me turn to one of the pages here, which has notes about the transfer, and I quote, "Chilly Scenes of Winter is presented in its original aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1. This new digital transfer was created in 4K resolution on a LaserGraphics Director film scanner from the 35mm original camera negative. The new master was referenced against a previous master made from a 35mm interpositive that was approved by cinematographer Bobby Byrne. The original monaural soundtrack was remastered from the 35mm magnetic track." So I admit again that my experience with this film and the various versions and its releases is very limited indeed. I never had the great fortune of being able to see this film in the theater. I caught up with it on home video several years back, in fact, but I don't have many versions of it, say, on physical media. So I can say, however, based or despite my limited experience and knowledge base with regard to the release history of this film, for me, this Criterion release is very welcome. And again, I remember watching this on home video many years ago, but watching it now and listening to it now on this Blu-ray edition from 2023, this year, I am very impressed. I mean, it looks and sounds crystal, and it looks really quite warm. Even the scenes that are out in the cold and say outdoors in the sort of snow settings, there's a type of warmth in the texture. And so it has that way, the photography has this way of feeling both warm and inviting while showing this great expanse of the outdoors, the snowy outdoors, as it were. And I think that has a way in which it's sort of the photography is linked to the intimacy of the characters as they're being portrayed by Joan Micklin Silver and others here. So it might be a type of subjective thing again, I guess my point is that the way I view this film and the way I see it and the way I hear it in the context of, say, this Criterion release, it feels like a very warm, textured film. And I was in no way distracted by anything that I saw on screen, but rather on the contrary, it was very inviting. So I was very, very impressed with this release indeed. And like with many other Criterion release, this Blu-ray release comes with its own set of supplements. And so let us talk about what those supplements are. First up, we have a supplement which is Joan Micklin Silver on Chilly Scenes of Winter. This is described as being from the year 2005. This is approximately 14 minutes. And it's described as being a Directors Guild of America Visual History Series interview. Michael Pressman. And this is really great because it provides a type of background and primer and maybe for those who are being introduced to the works of Joan Micklin Silver for the first time. This is a great introduction and a great jumping off point in terms of a further exploration of the filmography and biography and works of Joan Micklin Silver. So from Joan Micklin Silver's perspective herself. So this is really, really great. She talks about her sort of biographical details growing up in Omaha, and also remembering certain details about films that she had seen growing up, including making reference to the Alfred Hitchcock film Shadow of a Doubt. And she does talk too about also watching other films like Satyajit Ray, for example, and make reference to the Apu trilogy, which is really wonderful, and how watching films like that provided the great inspiration for her to want to enter into this world of the art and craft of filmmaking. And so that led to her career efforts in terms of writing and screenwriting. And then also she makes mention too of how that transformed into the opportunity to become a feature film director or a director in terms of short works, and then leading to feature film directing, including encountering the works of Ann Beattie, leading to the possibility of making this film, which ultimately became known as Chilly Scenes of Winter. But that also is a very interesting story in and of itself. Actually, why don't I bring this up here? Also, what's so great about this interview with Joan Micklin Silver is that she touches upon the fascinating release history of this film, Chilly Scenes of Winter, how this film was originally released in 1979 under the title Head Over Heels. But then it had a different, it was then re-released some years later, around 1982. And that time, upon its re-release, it was given the title of Chilly Scenes of Winter. And also, there were certain edits made to that re-release version that one can say makes the re-release version actually quite distinctly different than the original release version. So when this film is described as being from 1979, it's an interesting description because what we are seeing here for this film, at least for this release, in terms of the feature film that's offered on this Blu-ray, appears to correspond to the re-release version that was made around 1982. And it's also given the title, Chilly Scenes of Winter, which again corresponds to the re-release version, rather than the title of Head Over Heels. So these details emerge here and in other parts of the supplement. So it's very fascinating. Again, it also shows what the filmmakers were intending upon initial release, and what they were and were not able to negotiate upon the initial release, but then perhaps upon giving the film a second lease on life, in a manner of speaking, this provided the opportunity for certain choices that that filmmakers wanted to make at the start of the initial release, but didn't get their own way. They had a second chance to quote unquote make the film in a way that was closer to their intended vision. So these decisions, I think, are very fascinating because not very often do you get this type of film that gets, in a sense, a second chance of a release, in a manner of speaking. Not all films, right, get a re-release like this. And in fact, it's an interesting thing we'll talk a little bit about the trailer that's included as part of the supplements. You can actually see that the trailer is, it says chilly scenes of winter, and it actually makes reference. It was previously known as Head Over Heels. And so it has this interest. There again, I think there are a handful of films, not many films, right, that are well, I should take that back. It's not often the case that you get films discussed where you have these very robust re-releases that themselves have their own type of identity or a place, as it were. And I really, really admire that and appreciate that this interview with Joan Micklin Silver touches upon that, I think, in a really, I think, honest and very open and direct way. So, and again, adds to the fascination of the film itself because, again, it really has a difference of character. And we'll talk a little bit about it when we get to some of the other supplements. It's really fascinating indeed. So these and other reasons, I think, are really there for one to want to watch this interview with Joan Micklin Silver. This is really great. Again, it's a great indication into the type of artist and filmmaker that Joan Micklin Silver is in the context of Chilly Scenes of Winter and other films. It's also a great introduction to the world and filmography of Joan Micklin Silver, which is a great and rich filmography, and also other aspects of filmmaking and her cinema aesthetic. So well done for being able to include this. So again, this is approximately 14 minutes. And then continuing on, we have Joan Micklin Silver encounters with the New York director, and this is a documentary from 1983. It's approximately 45 minutes, and this is with Katja Raganelli, also credited as Konrad Wickler, but this is the Raganelli documentary, which is in the German language, but the discussions with Joan Micklin Silver and others are in English. So it is a documentary that is in the German language, but some of the discussions with the participants who are speaking English are recorded in English. So totaling 45 minutes overall. This is really great because we have, again, many aspects of Joan Micklin Silver's life that are touched upon here. For example, again, Omaha is mentioned. Also, her works leading up to or prior to Chilly Scenes of Winter or Head Over Heels, like discussions about Hester Street, for example, her life in Cleveland and then New York City, her relationship with her parents, the idea of film score or what her film education was, let's put it that way, and watching a lot of films and being exposed to a lot of films at the MoMA, she mentions, which is a really great detail, talking about her relationship with Ray Silver, and this idea of running a real estate company and a film company is at the same time. There's a great discussion about, again, I mentioned Hester Street, and Bernice bobs her hair as well. Shelley Duvall, and Between the Lines is also mentioned, and also the Ray Silver directed film On the Yard as well, and then Chilly Scenes of Winter, and then or at the time, again, upon its initial release, Head Over Heels, and we have the idea of the attempts at adapting the book. Again, this was based on the book by Ann Beattie, and there are aspects of the adaptation of the book which are faithful to the original book, but then also differ from the original book as well. So it's great in terms of the description. I think the phrase that's used is weird romantic comedy, which I think is so apropos. So. Again, another great, insightful documentary. It is from 1983, so it's sort of leading up to the filmography of Joan Micklin Silver up to this time. So it doesn't discuss, obviously, anything beyond this point, but It is very in-depth, and it again goes into much detail about the filmography body of work of Joan Micklin Silver and Ray Silver, Appel Silver as well, and their working relationship, their personal relationship, their professional relationship, and also some discussions about working with Joan Micklin Silver from some of the actors and participants from her works. So overall, another great, insightful documentary into the workings and the cinematic approaches and the cinematic philosophy of this artist Joan Micklin Silver in the context of many of her works, including Head Over Heels or Chilly Scenes of Winter. So please check this out if you can. This is really, really worth it. Again, it's approximately, this documentary is approximately 45 minutes, yes. And that's not all, because then we have producing Chilly Scenes of Winter. Excuse me. This is Triple Play Productions, and this is a sort of a set of interviews with Griffin Dunn and Amy Robinson together being interviewed, and then also Mark Metcalf being interviewed as well. So we have these two sets of interviews, then edited together into this one a really great comprehensive supplement from 2022, and it's approximately 28 minutes. And here we have, again, the three of them, again, working as producers here. They each talk about their backgrounds in terms of acting and also working in the industry, starting out. The New York scene is mentioned a little bit here. And then also encountering the Ann Beattie novel or the works, and how they felt about Ann Beattie's writing, and how the opportunity did arise in terms of producing this. And then they talk about their Triple Play Productions and their efforts at trying to produce this film, and finding Joan Micklin Silver to work with as a director, the writer and director. Of course, writing this, adapting the novel of Ann Beattie, again, going into some of the great challenges and some of the great anecdotes about adapting the novel, making changes, and also being faithful in certain areas. And so this is also a great example of novel adaptation for the screen. And they also talk too about the title, the issue, or the anecdotes behind the title, Head Over Heels, versus the title of Chilly Scenes of Winter, and also certain changes between what was, for instance, the ending of the initial release version of the film versus what was the ending for what the re-release version was, etc. And we'll get a little bit into that when we get into some of the other supplements. Also, the idea of the snow, working outdoors, Utah, working with Gloria Graham, who's one of the great cinema legends. Casting was also very important. John Hurt and Mary Beth Hurt. And let me just take the opportunity here. Their performances are really great. They go places that, again, they reveal character traits that are not, sometimes they are likable. Those traits are likable, but they're not always likable. And I think that's a really brave and quite daring place to go, because each of these characterizations is willing to go places that might make them seem quite unlikable in the eyes of the viewer, but they never lose our interest. We are always captivated by their stories and by who they are, which I think is a testament to the strength of the performances. They're really great performances here, and I think that's touched upon by Mark Metcalf, Amy Robinson, and Griffin Dunn, respectively, in this great set of interviews. And also the history of triple play, and then how that changed into double play, and the three producers here, what happened to that working relationship, and what they ended up doing post Chilly Scenes of Winter, etc. So this is a very great set of interviews. I know of each of these persons. They're very famous, but again, my knowledge base with regard to the history of triple play and then double play was very limited until I got a sense of it through supplements like this. So really wonderful stuff. So this is really great to have So please check this out if you can. Again, producing Chilly Scenes of Winter with Griffin Dunn and Amy Robinson and Mark Metcalf. Approximately 28 minutes. It's really great. Please check it out. And then the supplements continue with what's described as the original ending. And this is, again, a reference to the ending that was used for purposes of the one version of the film. And then, of course, you contrast that with what ends up being the ending for the quote-unquote standard version of the film, the Chilly Scenes of Winter version of the film. So you get a sense of what the ending had been by watching the original ending, or what's referred to as the ending for the initial release of the film. So if you're curious as to how the release versions differ, you can get a sense of that by watching this original ending. Because again, the tenor is actually quite different indeed. So it's very interesting indeed to have that included. So please check that out if you can, the original ending. And then the trailer is also included. And I mentioned how the trailer is for the version of Chilly Scenes of Winter. And actually, I like the detail where it says previously referred to as or known as Head Over Heels. So again, acknowledging the interesting release and re-release history of this film, Chilly Scenes of Winter, as shown by that little detail in the trailer, which is also a great trailer, by the way, and also the original ending, and it's touched upon in many of these supplements. So all in all, I think a great set of supplements for a great release. I should point out that I am aware that this is a film that has been released on other labels that besides Criterion. And so, there is no commentary track included with this Criterion release. It would have been nice if there had been a commentary track, maybe borrowed from elsewhere, or maybe created their own commentary track. I don't know. Again, Criterion releases, not all Criterion releases get their commentary tracks. Some do, others don't. Here we have a situation where, unfortunately, we don't get a commentary track, or we don't get a carryover commentary track from elsewhere. And so it's not, it would have been really nice if we'd had, say, an archival commentary track or a new commentary track, or both, whatever the case may have been. So the fact that we have no commentary track, I think, could be seen as being a weak point of this Criterion release. I think very fairly so. But whatever weak point that might be in the eyes of the consumer at the end of the day, we still, I think, have a really great set of supplements that go into the heart of the matter when it comes to Chilly Scenes of Winter, the production values, the issues of the making of the film, the adaptation of the novel, casting choices, performance choices, Joan Micklin Silver, the producers, etc. And so all of those points are covered, I think, in great detail and great depth in the supplements that are included with this Criterion release. So whatever critiques might be there, I think those critiques are, I think, well countered indeed. Quite robustly so, with the Criterion supplements that we find with this Blu-ray release. So I think overall I'm very impressed indeed with this. And so now let's talk very briefly about the packaging and the leaflet or the insert, which is part of the overall Criterion package here. So I like this cover art design very much. Again, it's very evocative of the film itself, Chilly Scenes of Winter, snow, outdoors, and the environment. And you can see also a tree and a car and also a figure here that's standing in the foreground, and also a house as well. And I think these details, if you know the film, you might recognize that these details are part of the environmental landscape, and also very much part of the plot, and maybe certain points of the plot that one might say are very crucial and very significant. So and I like the A-frame house, etc. So I like these details very much. It's very apropos, and I like the use of the font and everything, and has that great sense of how should I put it? It has that. It really is in keeping with the late 70s, early 80s aesthetic, for lack of a better way of expressing what I mean. I really love this. It's very evocative indeed. So production credits here with regard to the art. Art directors Sarah Habibi, Eric Skillman, illustration Mark Aspinall, designer Eric Skillman. So I'm very pleased with this. Very nice artwork indeed, and the artwork is carried through into the into the insert here. And I should point out that this is a plastic casing with the Blu-ray going in on this side, and here this is the compartment which is designated for the fold-out leaflet or insert, which I've already removed prior to the start of this video discussion. So that's what it looks like on the inside. And the insert, which I refer to is right here. It is a fold-out type, and it does have a continuation of the illustrations and drawings, which I think are really nice. Just one point, though, I should point out that, as you can see, this is curled like this. And I must say that when I received this in the mail, I opened it up out of the plastic wrapping, and it appeared like this. So you can see, sorry about that, you can see that it's curled upwards like this. So I don't think it's meant to do that. I think it's meant to be a flat piece of paper, but I think what happened was that perhaps as it was inserted here, maybe it wasn't inserted all the way. And so because it wasn't inserted all the way, what happened was when it closed like this, it caused the paper to fold upwards like so. So that's a little minor point I should point out in terms of quality control. I don't think it's meant to be curled up like this. So that's just something to keep in mind. But it doesn't at all prohibit me from enjoying the fold-out leaflet for what it offers. So. It's a very minor point, but again, I'm still able to enjoy the essay and the illustrations and the information found in this leaflet. So it's I think a fine leaflet. I mean, I should point out that it is a fold-out. So I'm not a fan of the fold-out type. As I've mentioned before, I'll say it again. I'd much rather see the staple booklet type. But for what it's worth, and it is indeed worth a lot, we get a great essay. This is by Shonni Enelow. And this is called Nowhere Fast. And so, again, more information, more detail about Joan Micklin Silver, the context of Chilly Scenes of Winter, her filmography, and also certain plot points and thematic points from a type of almost various readings and interpretations, etc. Really great essay, Nowhere Fast by, it's really wonderful. So please check out this essay. Again, my strong recommendation is please first watch the film, and also after you've seen the film, you can enjoy the great essay Nowhere Fast. So it's included as part of this leaflet here. With the Criterion Collection Blu-ray release of Chilly Scenes of Winter. So that is, in a nutshell, my reaction or my feelings about this release from the Criterion Collection. Again, overall, I'm very pleased. I'm very happy that this work by Joan Micklin Silver is in the Criterion Collection in this physical media Blu-ray release. And while there are certain points of criticism I might make, overall, this is great. It is a very memorable film. It is so emotionally absorbing and engaging. And I think, again, as I mentioned before, it's doing it in a way that is this quirky, weird, romantic comedy that is also very human and very approachable, very understandable, and thus making for, and it's also cinematically compelling. Structurally, it is clever, witty, and brilliant. And so a strong recommendation. Again, if you haven't seen this film, please check it out. Chilly Scenes of Winter. All right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great movies, including Chilly Scenes of Winter and other films by Joan Micklin Silver. So until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers. Thank you.